All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Takashima. Really excited to be here. Welcome to the CDP Playbook Masterclass. I should first start with a small apology that we can't do this session in German. Arthur here can speak German, but my German is absolutely awful. All I've got for you today is Es tut mir leid, aber ich kann kein Deutscher. Is that right?
Yeah, was great.
Okay, good. That was Google Translate. If that was going to be horrible, I was going to use ChatGPT next time. Anyway, let's get started. So we've got a lot to get through today. So we'll do just a quick round of introductions, who we are, our backgrounds, our experiences. Then we will do, we'll set the scene with what CDPs are and the role that they play in the B2B space. Then we'll get into the bulk of the session, which is about how to build a CDP playbook and how we can help you build your own. And then we'll finish with, obviously, a conclusion, and we'll open the floor to some Q&A. So a little bit about me. And sorry that the text is a bit too small. I realize that none of you at the back can probably read this, but I have been a marketing data strategist for about 6 or 7 years now. I've worked with multiple different CDPs. I've predominantly worked in the gambling and financial services sectors. And some of you may be able to see, I specialize in first, second, third-party data strategies. I've helped businesses implement omnichannel campaigns and help them orchestrate it. I have experience in some consent frameworks as well as some cookieless solutions out there. So yeah, really looking forward to sharing some ideas with you. But for now, I'm going to let Arthur introduce himself.
Hello, everybody, also from my side. I'm Arthur, and I don't tell the surname. It's Wawczynkiewicz, so very, very long. Don't forget it. Just say Arthur to me. I'm a solution architect at Ibexa. And yeah, I'm basically helping all our customers and partners on the digitalization process and to help companies to digitalize their processes and also to automate their processes. This is a little bit the key of my daily work, to find solutions to automate the typical business processes and data streams and connectors and APIs, and also to get things personalized. So there are different modules in the system which support the personalization. So today we will also see the CDP deep dive, but there are also many other tools inside this DXP world which supports this. And I have also worked a lot with different customers for different regions and different topics. You can see some of the typical brands, publishers, B2B companies, also some finance customers and different brands here. And we'll go a little bit deeper into this complete DXP and CDP story today. And where I'm working, my company is Ibexa. So this is a DXP solution which is completely focused on B2B business. So you will see how this system can support the digitalization process of companies. So we have a lot of single features which support it, and the system is over 20 years in the market. So we started with some CMS and raised up into the DXP solution. And we are currently part of the Quantum Group, which is an ecosystem of best of breed system selection. And we are working together with partners, for example, with Comwrap, Reply. And yeah, we have customers all over the world, so in basically 160 countries. And our central focus is Europe. So we have, as you can see on a map, many offices around Europe, and we support the customers in their business and with the different locations. And our average project time of customers is about 10 years. So we ensure that the customers are successful and get a really good experience working together with DXP and also the CDP solutions. Okay, but let's look into the system. So you can see here that this complete DXP solution consists of different modules which support the complete company stories, so you can start with headless, APIs, connectability, transferring data between different systems. We have the omni-channel module where you can distribute the content into different channels. You see then, for example, integration, automation, campaign management. So all the typical processes where you need to, when you want to go into this digitalization process. And at the end, you see also some personalization. You see customer portals, account management. So all the typical things to handle complex data, complex products, and complex business processes. But today, we will focus on one single aspect. It's the customer data platform. And we will see how we can raise up our business using a CDP and how to automate processes using the CDP.
Great. Thanks, Arthur. So a little bit about Comwrap Reply. So we have been partners with Ibexa for just over 5 years now. And from day one, we have been focused on achieving exceptional efficiency in all of our project rollouts. We have been, we are kind of quite proud to be pioneers of the cloud native strategy, of rolling out blueprint implementations. And that's really been key to success, the key to our success in shortening project lead times, reducing cost of ownership, and ultimately helping our clients onboard Ibexa technologies like DXPs and CDPs a little bit more efficiently, a little bit more effectively. And so as you can see, we offer our services in multiple different areas. We have been Partner of the Year 3 of the last 4. We're Platinum Partners. And yeah, we're really looking forward to innovating and driving this partnership forward. All right. So maybe a lot of you already are aware of this conversation, but I thought it would be worthwhile just to reiterate why everyone's talking about CDPs. Whether that's, well, first of all, it's not just a shiny new technology that's become quite trendy to integrate into your tech stack. There have actually been outside influences that have basically pushed the CDP into the spotlight. And so the first one to talk about, I think, is probably the most obvious, the loss of third-party data. So what does that mean for businesses? It means that cost per acquisition is going to become a bit harder to control. So the loss of third-party data is mainly going to affect, it's mostly going to impact programmatic display. So what that means is that organizations or brands will find it more difficult to track, target, analyze, and then attribute all of their prospects, all of their upper funnel campaign activities. That's going to become far more difficult to do. And so what this means is that, sure, some of you may be thinking, well, I'll move my budget to contextual targeting, or I'll rely on some of the cookieless solutions out there. But the thing is, all of these brands will be doing the same thing. And so obviously, the more demand, it drives up the prices. So your CPAs are still going to be harder to control. And so we need to sort of transition into this new environment where you need to become less reliant on your third-party data and become more dependent, more reliable on your first-party data. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that the CDP has all of the answers for you, but it is the ideal vehicle to move you into the cookieless environment, into a first-party data strategy environment. Next one, if you look at the bottom left, so this is something that we can all relate to, I'm sure. So the number of connected devices that we all use has increased drastically over the last 5 years. It's doubled from 2015 to 2020, and it's going to continue onto that trajectory over the next few years. And so what this means for brands is that you've got all these consumers are now, in some cases, interacting with your brands in multiple different channels. And so what the brands see is a very fragmented view of the customer, is a fragmented view of the journey. And so a CDP is a perfect tool to sort of ingest all of those different data sources and build that holistic view for you. Now, what that means for brands is they're having to not really force, but having to basically spread their budget across multiple different marketing channels in order to get that exposure across TikTok, across Facebook, across email, SMS, push, whatever marketing channel that they should have presence on, they will have to start activating their campaigns across. And so what that leads me on to is the next point, which is top right. With every single marketing channel that you activate, there's more and more tools that you have to onboard. So a lot of organizations have a very bloated tech stack. If you look at how many MarTech tools are available, or were available in 2011 versus how many MarTech tools are available today, you can see the sort of meteoric growth in that part of the industry. And so most enterprises, large enterprises, have anywhere from 70 to 100 tools, which is quite scary to think about. And that leads me to the bottom right chart. The more tools you have, the more data silos you're going to get as well across your tech stack. And the more data silos you've got, the more opportunity for data breaches and data leakage. And so if you look at the number of GDPR fines that has been clocked over the last 4 years, you can see it's, again, risen drastically. And so in 2022 alone, that's something like 2.7, 2.8 billion euros of fines. Now, I don't know across how many organizations that's divided across, but it's quite a sizable amount. And so it begs the question, if you're a CMO or a CTO for an organization that has this many tools in your tech stack, do you have full visibility of the data that's being captured, that's been stored, that's been transferred, that's been activated? Because if not, then a CDP is a good way to start controlling that, because it can be act as like a layer of data governance across your entire tech stack. But I'd rather keep this session light, so I'll hand it back over to Arthur. You can talk about the Ibexa CDP.
So when you look at CDP solutions, then we often ask, what's the goal, or what can we do with this kind of tools? And a typical scenario, what you can find at customers when you see it on your left side, is that you have many different tools. You have some analytic tools, you have a CRM system, you have some orders from the customers, you have some clicks on a website, you have downloads of white papers, all the typical use cases, and they are somehow collected in different systems. So mostly in some kind of silos, they are already there in the companies, but they cannot be activated. And so you see some examples on the left side. And the CDP takes all this data for the different systems. There are many connectors. You can just attach your analytics tool or your CRM system to this CDP, and then it gets the data from the different tools. And what it does is it uses some intelligent metadata mapping so that you get a unified view on the customer where you can see, okay, this customer clicked this topics or this categories on a shop, on a website, and he downloaded this white paper, and he has used this form, and his orders were very good in the last 2 weeks, for example. And then you can create some target groups. So you have a single customer view with all the events and all the to-dos the customer did on the different channels. And this unification of the data is done used by some intelligent modeling. There are scenarios and models in behind the CDP solution and collect all the data, and then you can reuse this data to orchestrate your output channels and what you want to do. We will see later in also some screenshots how this easily works. And you do not need any kind of data analyst to create the scenario. It's really quite easy. When you understand your business use case, you know what you basically need as a target group, then it's really easy to create this target group using some CDP. And the process in the future is to make the automatization so that you do not have many things to do to automate your processes and to automate the target group for the different channels. And the channels can be any kind of social media, for example. It can be some personalization in the customer portals. It can be personalization in some web shops, for example, for resellers. And we will have in the later steps some examples how this personalization can really have an effect on the experience of the website users. For example, resellers or customers. Okay.
Brilliant.
So let us look now a little bit deeper how this works.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, one last slide before we start on the playbook, I promise. So yeah, I think we all know what that there's an added layer of complexity when it comes to B2B marketing, where it just makes it a little bit trickier to navigate your way through the B2B space. And I thought it's best summarized like this. So there are multiple decision makers within the same organization, which tends to lead to longer sales cycles. And so I thought I'd just quickly demonstrate this in a simple diagram. And I thought the example I would use is an organization purchasing a CDP. Actually, can I have a show of hands? Who here has a CDP or is thinking about buying a CDP? Okay, great. So maybe this playbook's for you. So since CDPs is designed to unify different data sources, it's designed to give you that effortless cross-channel experience. Naturally, the demand for CDPs comes from the marketing team, in this case, the CMO. And so it's the CMO's role to understand industry trends in order to see that there's a need for a first-party data strategy, and ultimately make the decision to make the CDP an integral part of the tech stack. Now, the conversation will start there, but maybe they will want to get buy-in from different teams, so they will take the conversation to the product team. And so the head of product team needs to understand the value of having a holistic data set to make sure that they see the value of how that robust data set will give them a slightly more accurate picture in terms of the customer journey analytics or profile analytics, anything of that kind. And so hopefully the conversation moves forward and it will go into the consideration phase where maybe you will do an RFP and you will shortlist a handful of CDPs and make sure that you're choosing the right vendor for you. And then at that point, maybe the head of engineering says, okay, let's go into the planning and analysis stage. Let's make sure that the use cases that have been proposed, let's make sure that we can't do it ourselves already. Or God forbid they say, let's build a CDP ourselves. And if all goes well, the conversation will go into the onboarding phase where the CFO and the CEO will naturally do the contract negotiations. Now, some of you may be thinking that those people don't usually get involved in the CDP conversation. This is just a simple example, representation of a B2B sales cycle. And then, once the CDP contract has been signed and it's been integrated, I know it takes much longer than that, your power users will be your product managers and your marketing, your product team and your marketing team. And so they will be the ones who will become experts in which use cases are going to get the biggest ROI, which first-party data strategy should they be using, and basically execute that vision, that roadmap that the CMO initially laid out. And then if all goes well, the CMO will be a happy customer, and they will then go on to social media and talk about it, or they will start doing referrals, testimonials, or maybe speak at events like this. Anyway, the difference between B2C and B2B here is quite obvious, right? That line would track just a single customer, or a single user in the B2C world. In the B2B world, it's multiple different people, it's multiple different decision makers. At any given point, any of those users can either change roles, change teams, or leave the company. And so what that means is that it leads to inefficiencies, which can ultimately lead to lost opportunities. And so this is where a CDP can help, right? It can plug itself into different data sources, it can listen to multiple different customer signals, and map those individuals to the same organization, and just basically enhance your capability for account-based marketing. Having said that, because the CDP has to plug itself into multiple different data sources, because it is designed to manage the marketing channels across all those different life stages, from the get-go, it is a complicated project. And so this is why we've designed a playbook to help you sort of navigate your way through that complex project. So I'm not going to go through all 8 of these components. Otherwise, we'll be here all evening, and I'm sure some of you are looking forward to having a drink later on, as am I. So today's session, we're only going to go through the first 3. The customer experience map, the data resolution map, and the tactical use cases. Now, I don't want to shortchange you, so I'll give you a quick run-through of all of the others, but hopefully you can see at the back there. By reading the title of the 8 components, hopefully you can see what they're all about. So, for example, we will create a customer experience map and a data resolution map for you, which I'll go into detail later on. And then we can devise your tactical use cases. By doing the first 3 components, we can build your 4th, which is your data governance plan. This is like outlining your procedures, your policies, getting your GDPR processes in place, like your DSAR requests, your deletion requests, things like that. And then once you've got the top 4 components, you can work on the 5th, which is on the bottom left, your technical deliverables. And once you've identified your technical deliverables, you can sort of merge that with your tactical use cases to say, right, through the first 3 components, we have identified 25 use cases that we want to implement. But we need to deliver these 8 technical deliverables. I'm just picking numbers out of the air. We need to deliver 8 technical deliverables. But if we want to prioritize these 3 use cases, we need to make sure that we deliver deliverables 1 and 2 first. And so by merging those 2 components together, we get your implementation plan. And hopefully you see where this is going. Naturally, by having an implementation plan, you can move on to the deployment, which is where you're activating your use cases. This is where we start training your teams to make sure you become self-sufficient in using the CDP. And then finally, you move into a test and learn workflow, where we show you how to do A/B testing, we show you how to optimize, we show you how to move your team into a data-driven optimization model. So, moving on to the customer experience map. Sorry. So this is the first component that we offer. Some of you may have already heard about a customer experience map. Some of you may already have one within your organization. It's a visual document that's typically used by UI UX designers, and it shows you the different life stages. It shows you the different journey steps, the different touch points that the user interacts with, and it just gives everyone a nice view of what the customer goes through as they're flowing through your different journeys. And what we've done is we've simply repurposed it, and we've added a few layers of information on it, such as like trackable data points, key identifiers, key metrics, KPIs, things like that. And we've just made it a little bit easier for us to navigate our way through a very complex project like a CDP. And so, yeah, let's start building one up, and you will see exactly how it can help your business. So, imagine this is a single document. We typically use tools like Miro. You can obviously use your own collaboration tool. But imagine it's a single document, and every single layer I go through, it's just stacked on top of one another, okay? So we'll start at the top. So you've got your 5 different life stages: awareness, consideration, onboarding, retention, advocacy. And then the first layer of information, I like to start with guiding principles. So I think it's very important to start there because it establishes a set of values, it establishes a set of guidelines that you can use to help guide your decision-making process. So every single campaign, every single message, email, copy, every single data strategy that you're implementing across those different life stages, it should be in line with your guiding principles. This is how you sort of synchronize your thinking, your strategy across the board. And so I'd say this is quite important, so get your leadership team involved in this and make sure that they can help you define this. Then the next item in line would be your journey steps. So you don't have to map out everything, but this is where you want to try and understand exactly what your customers are going through at every single point of your life stage. So imagine in awareness, it could be going to a conference, it could be clicking on a Facebook advert, or it could be just seeing a simple impression on Facebook, on LinkedIn or something. For consideration, it could be things like coming to your website, downloading a white paper. For onboarding, it could be opening your registration form, or it could be filling out the registration form but dropping off at some point. And so, you know, as I said, it shouldn't map out everything. I understand that depending on your business model, depending on how many products you have or the kind of services you offer, trying to map out all of your journey steps might create a bit of a maze. But what you should aim to do to have on this kind of document is to map out at least 70 to 80% of it, so you understand what are the most common paths, what is the ideal path that you want your customers to take. You know, where are your main drop-off points? What are the alternative paths that those customers can take if they do drop off and come back somewhere? And I understand also that it's maybe not as linear as well, and it could be bi-directional, so something to keep in mind. The next layer of information is touch point. So as you can see, these are just examples, by the way. As you can see, the touch points will differ depending on which part of your life stage you're in. So at the top of the funnel, you could see the adverts on LinkedIn, Facebook. You might attend a conference. But as they move down the funnel, the touch points will differ. It might be downloading a white paper. It might be logging into your portal or speaking to an account manager. And these are very important to highlight because these become the building blocks for your first-party data strategy. Every single touch point is either collecting first-party data or is an opportunity to collect first-party data. Okay. Next in line is department. So this is pretty obvious. So we want to sort of document who's in charge of those touch points. Because as you know, different people are in charge of the different touch points. Different teams are in charge of the different stages. So I've worked for companies where one team is in charge of awareness and consideration. Another team is in charge of onboarding. Obviously, the retention team is in charge of retention, or maybe the CRM team. And sometimes those teams don't even talk to each other. They have no idea what the other team's doing. And so trying to centralize that information on one document can help you, as I keep saying, navigate your way through this conversation. And so having the departments, the teams, and the individuals that you've nominated to be involved in the CDP project should be listed on this document. Next in line is key metrics. So this is pretty self-explanatory, I think. So these are the measurable metrics that determine how efficient, how effective are your operations at driving traffic to your website, to your app, and then pushing them through the funnel. And it's important to get to come to an agreement on this, because these will become the basis of proving the value of the CDP. It's about proving the incremental value of your CDP. It's going to become the basis of your frameworks and your measurement frameworks and your dashboards. That's going to show the senior stakeholders the incremental value that the CDP is bringing. Next in line is primary KPIs. So naturally, you would use the measurable metrics to calculate how cost-effective are you at bringing traffic to the website. How efficient are you at converting site visitors to registered users? How many new customers have you brought on board in the last month? How many active customers are currently sat in your database? And what is the average lifetime value? And more importantly, what is that lifetime value doing? Is it going up? Is it going down? What's the year on year? Things like that. And then you have your churn rate. How often are they churning? How often are your active customers churning? And so what I've done in the past is, and those primary KPIs are just examples. We'll obviously tailor them to your business. But one thing I did for one of the gambling companies was deposit rates. So once we implemented a few cross-channel campaigns, we said, what did it do to the deposit rate? We ran some A/B tests, and we proved that we increased the deposit rate by 11% by doing some cross-channel campaigns. Again, for the CPA is not on there, but we managed to reduce the CPA by 27% on some of our campaigns by orchestrating some cross-channel journeys at the top of the marketing funnel. So those are the kind of primary KPIs that, I'm sure would be the best way to talk to your senior stakeholders, because ultimately we want to drive results, and that's the language that they speak, is results. Then you have customer experience. So as you can see, this graph swings from positive to negative. Fun fact, maybe you already know this, but these kind of charts, I remember the CX director for one of the companies I worked for told me this. The scale goes from +2 to -6. And that's because we as humans, when everything's going right, when you go to a restaurant, when you go to a hotel, when you go to a resort, when everything's great, you don't notice anything. You're just a happy camper and you're content. But if something goes bad, let's say your fork is dirty or there's no towels in the bathroom, you immediately recognize it, you immediately notice it, and you become quite hypersensitive to it. And so unfortunately, the scale goes from +2 to -6. I think that's just a reflection of us being creatures of convenience, I suppose. Now, I know that this kind of information is quite difficult to get, but typically organizations would use emails, polls, surveys, those feedback widgets on the websites to gauge the customer's feedback. And as you can see, it is quite a simple way to understand where your problematic areas are across your journey. As you can see in this example, the onboarding phase, most people are quite negative, so let's try and fix that. And then finally, probably the most important element of this document, or this map, is the trackable data. So every single circle represents a data source, and then with every single data source, you have a key identifier, and then with every single key identifier, you have user attributes. So you have data source, key identifiers, and user attributes. So for example, if we take website, your website, I know it's a channel, but it's also a data source according to the CDP. Your website is your data source. Your key identifier is going to be a cookie ID or a user ID, that identifier that is mapped to a single individual. And your user attributes could be things like page visited, dwell time, location, things like that. So it's like all the behavioral data or transactional data. And it's important to have this information on there so that you can visualize what data is available at every single stage of your life cycle, and so that everyone has a good understanding of what data is being tracked and how it can be mapped together. And ultimately, what you get is this. With all those added layers of information, with all those building blocks that you've pieced together, you now have a map that shows you more coherently where your quick win opportunities are and where your most problematic areas are as well. And furthermore, this is where it becomes a useful part of your playbook, because all of the key players across your organization now have the same information, the same level of understanding. They're all looking down the playing field in the same direction, and they can together, discuss different kind of use cases, different kind of data strategies, and just work better as a team in identifying how to fix those problems. On top of that, with every proposed use case, it becomes a lot easier to isolate the information that you need in order to discuss feasibility, right? So, for example, if you're looking at the onboarding stage and you're wanting to figure out, you've got a few use cases in your mind, you can immediately go, right, these are the journey steps I need to think about. These are the touch points. This is who's in charge of that stage of the journey. This is how I'm going to measure success. And here's the data source and the data points that I can use in order to influence that. And so it just makes it a lot more easier to collaborate and as I said, isolate the information to discuss the feasibility of those. And this is where, the 360 view of the CDP becomes a bit more obvious, to understand the value of the CDP. And so let's say you have, 1,000 customers who, well, not really customers yet, 1,000 users who've come to your website, they've opened the registration form, they've typed in a few things, and then they've dropped off. Let's say you've got 1,000 users who've done that. What the CDP can do is it can go, right, well, because the CDP is plugged into all the different data sources, I can tell you which ads they clicked on in the awareness phase. I can tell you which pages they visited in the consideration phase. And so I can use that information as a proxy to try and determine what products are they interested in. Why are they trying to join or register to your business? And you can use that information to simply tailor your retargeting campaigns and bring them back to the website with a more tailored experience. On top of that, because the CDP is plugged into CRM, you've got access to historical data. So you can use that historical data to start building propensity models. So imagine going back to your 1,000 users who are stuck in the onboarding stage. These propensity models can say, right, well, based on historical data, we think that these top 30% are the most likely to convert. And so with that information, you can retarget them, but you can bid more aggressively and say, right, those people are the most important to our business, so let's target them aggressively. Let's spend more money and make sure we can get those ads in front of them. But the propensity model can also tell you the bottom 70%, less likely to convert, so let's still retarget them because they are important to us, but let's bid a bit lower. And so you can find very small ways of finding those marketing efficiencies across all the different life stages, not just for onboarding, but across all the different stages. And so hopefully you can start to see now it becomes a lot easier to identify what your tactical use cases should be. What are the use cases that are going to make us market efficiently to all of our prospects? What are the use cases that are going to bring the traffic to the website and then convert them? And yeah, I think one layer of information that I forgot to, that I should have added on is volume. So how many users are in your awareness phase? How many users are in your consideration phase? Because by having this sort of information, you can also, it's another way of identifying your bottlenecks. So it's not just going to be 5 figures, but it was things like, for the consideration phase, how many unique users came to your website and bounced? How many users came to your website and visited multiple different pages? For onboarding, it could be how many users opened the registration form but disappeared, and another subsegment would be how many opened the registration form, filled out a few forms, went to page 2, and then disappeared. And so you've got all these sub-cohorts that you could use in order to see where people are getting stuck. And I would go as far as to say that this is probably one of the first things that you should do after you've activated your CDP, is to build those sort of life stage related cohorts. And moving on, once you've identified all of your use cases, you can go through a very simple prioritization exercise where we can tell you, or we can categorize all the different use cases in terms of high, medium, or low. So in terms of, if you look at the y-axis, this is return, or expected or projected business value. Now, this is quite subjective, but we would typically use variables like how many users are you going to influence with your use case? How many marketing channels are you going to activate across with this use case? Has it worked in the past? Obviously, that information will come from us, and we'll tell you if it's worked in the past or not. And by using those variables, we can sort of estimate and categorize all of your use cases in terms of high, medium, or low. And we'll do the same thing for effort. That's how much development work is going to be needed in order to implement those use cases. And I'm sure you can get it. All the use cases that have a high return but low effort, in this hypothetical case, it would be use case 4 and 7, they will go into sprint 1 and 2. And then all the use cases that have medium return and low effort, like 1 and 2 here, will go into sprint 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. And yeah, from my experience, this has been far easier to get everyone to understand why we're prioritizing the roadmap in this way. You know, I've worked for companies before where every team has their own laundry list. Every team has their own priorities, and it's sort of a bit of a bickering match to see who can speak the loudest and get their work prioritized. And so by doing it in this way, it sort of just democratizes the conversation a bit. It gives everyone a bit of a voice, and it makes everyone see why we are prioritizing the roadmap in this way. So I'm going to hand it back to Arte to talk a little bit about one of our clients.
Thanks, Nick, for the great insights about how to find the golden use case and activate the customer. He's a real expert on this topic. Okay, but let us look now at some customer case, which is quite interesting. It's Indie, which is a reseller from Netherlands, and the customer is selling real complex technical products to his resellers. And this customer had several expectations to use with DXP and CDP in this case. And the customer saw that personalization works really well in B2C cases, and would like to adapt this into the B2B case. So this customer has some customer portals where the resellers purchase and browse all the catalogs of the different products and the complex processes which are also in the B2B case, and the complex selling processes, and of course increase the basket size and resell another product, spare parts, and upsell and cross-sell things to the resellers, maybe to open new businesses, and also to automate some processes with advertising and some automatization on matching products, for example, if you sell something to your resellers. Okay, so there are some strategies and which were enabled for this customer to boost their business and to make the experience of the resellers a little bit better in the portal. So when we look at the portal, you can see here the portal with some categorization and some filtering. So these are really complex products with a lot of different variants and a lot of search required in the subcategories. So you can do the drill down search and look for the product you want to integrate into your product catalog to match the products for you as a reseller. And for this, it was a really big pain to browse through all the categories and find the correct product you want to repurchase from Indie and integrate it into your product catalog as a reseller. And for this case, we activated the personalization on the search and also on the categories, which means you can see here, for example, the categories, and these categories are not the typical ones which you can find on the product side. You will get this personalized. It means that we analyze the purchase behavior of the reseller and also the area in which the reseller works, so that we do not offer all the products and all the spare parts. We only offer at the top of the search and of the browse of the page only the products which are relevant for this specific reseller when he logs into the reseller portal and into the online shop. And also the ranking of the products is a very important thing, because when the faster you find the product, then your process will be quicker, your user experience will be quicker on the portal, because you do not need to spend a lot of time to do orders and reorder the same things. So we have several topics here where we could optimize the customer portal, also finding the correct products, re-rank the products which are relevant for the customer, and also integrated some analysis on app basket, for example, and to know and predict which kind of products the reseller often buys, so that we already can send some information and pre-configured baskets via email or other tools to the reseller to say, okay, do you want to reorder things? And this is automated through the CDP, so that we have defined these target groups and this automatism. And then after logging into this reseller portal, the resellers get the correct products on the first search page. And so for this case, Indie had already quite nice revenue on the category pages. So customers or resellers which were on the category pages, there was a rate of 8% revenue and conversion on the category pages. And after activating the CDP, so we took 3 weeks directly after activating the CDP, and this conversion rate on the category pages raised up to 12% within 3 weeks. This is quite a lot. When you see from 8 to 12, it's quite 50% of more conversions on the category pages because of the relevance and the quicker search, and less time which is spent on the portal, and the processes could be optimized. And also what is very impressive is the average conversion on the first product search. That means that the resellers search for a product, and based on their selling process in the past, and also on the categories which they typically browse, we could optimize this first product search result conversion to 50% from 30%. This is really an amazing value, because these resellers directly get from the product catalog after the first search, they find the product they need or they want to have. So this is quite impressive, and
pass it to me. Oh.
Yeah, now it's again your turn.
Thanks, Arta. So yeah, I'm going to have to get into a little bit more detail here, unfortunately. So yeah, the next component in part of our playbook is the data resolution map. So behind every great use case that Arta was talking about, there's a series of data points, data sets, key identifiers, user attributes, all merged together in order to create an ID graph to create that single customer profile view. Now, it feels very easy to say that. It took me 30 seconds, just to explain that. But who here has a good idea? Who here has a good understanding of what I just said? I've got one person there, I think. And so maybe this is one of the problems of why some CDP projects go astray, is because not everyone involved has a good understanding of the data architecture underneath. And what we're trying to do here is basically tell you that you don't have to be like a data engineer or have some kind of qualification in some data transformation in order to get involved in the CDP projects. And so what we do is we do a data resolution map for you, where we list out all of your different data sources. So your data sources will be your website, your app, your CRM, and your data warehouse if you have one. You will have all of your key identifiers. So as I said before, this could be your cookie ID, your user ID, could be your device ID, phone number, email address, anything that can be tied to a single individual. Then you will have your user attributes, like for the app, it could be they downloaded the app, they opened the app, they registered through the app, in-app behavior, basically. And then your CRM could be things like last product purchase, lifetime deposit value, first bet, last bet, things like that. And your data warehouse is typically like your churn propensity scores or your propensity to convert, for example. And so you list out all of your data sources like this. The next thing you need to also understand is how is that data transferred into your CDP? Is it done in real time, or is it done in batch? Is it every 24 hours or 12 hours or 6 hours? And it's very important to understand this, because you basically have different data points that have a high or low velocity. I think that's the best way to explain it. One of my friends is a data engineer, and he explained it to me once. And basically, take the CRM data, for example. You will typically have low velocity data points. Those are things like those are things that are not updated that frequently. So your email address, your first name, last name, your physical address. Your high velocity data points are the things that are updated frequently. So like last product purchased, website visits, last trade, first trade, things like that. Or not first trade, but last trade. And so by understanding the velocity, or let's call it update frequency of your data points, that should help you determine what cadence should your pipelines be built in. Like how often should you be pushing that data into the CDP? Because if you have one data source that has both high and low velocity, and you're batch uploading that every 24 hours, you're going to have inaccurate data. You're going to have data that's inconsistent across your CDP audiences. So this is why it's very important for everyone to have some baseline understanding of what's going on there. Then it goes into the CDP. Naturally, the CDP will connect all of those different data sets together to create that single customer view. And then you create those audiences that will be then activated across your different destinations. So it could be your DSP, it could be your social platforms, it could be an ESP, which is email service provider, or your CRM. I mean, obviously that's not an exhaustive list. It can be like an attribution tool, analytics tools, A/B testing tools, things like that. And then you want to finish off with a high-level view of what's happening across those different integration points. And this is just a very simple explanation of what's happening across those different, as I said, integration points. And I think it's important to have this kind of document, because I would go as far to say every single person that's involved in your CDP project should have some kind of basic understanding of this. And if they don't, then, well, they need to read this up and get to grips with it. Because by having this kind of document, it makes all of your future meetings, discussions, workshops be more constructive and be more cohesive, I think. And so hopefully you're starting to see now how we do our ideation process of how we implement our CDP projects. We first do the top-down approach, where we look at your macro strategy. We understand what are your KPIs, what are your metrics, what are your drop-off points, and we propose a few ideas, a few solutions to you. And that comes in the shape of a CX map. Then we do the bottom-up approach, which is where we understand the fundamental architecture beneath your tech stack. We try and understand what your data ecosystem looks like, what kind of data sources you have, identifiers, how is it transferred, how is it moved across. And that comes in the shape of a data resolution map. And so we merge the top-down and bottom-up, and we meet somewhere in the middle to identify all of your tactical use cases. These are the use cases that are actually scalable, that are actually feasible. Now, those are just some textbook use cases that you typically see in a CDP project. And yeah, all businesses will have some variation of those use cases. But we're here to try and help you find those tactical use cases that actually can be done. So I'm going to give it back to Arthur.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
Okay, so as said, we can look a little bit now into the user interface of such a DXP. So we know how to find the golden use cases now, and then we need to activate them. So what you can see here is an overview of the different data flows, which means it's the left side of the previous chart, so where you collect all the data from all your different systems. So you can see here some example activations. It's you have here some DXP user profiles. What are they doing in the CMS or in the DXP? CRM platform, some marketing automation tools, website tracking. So all the different tools which deliver data, and you can analyze all this different data which is collected from the different tools. So here you can create that new data flow and attach it to your CDP, and it will start getting data into the CDP, and then the CDP automatism does analyze all this input data and tries to find the cross references between the users and the use cases. So the sessions from the website analytics, and also the orders, or some information about the customer journey from the CRM system. And then in the next steps, you can see here how many data is imported from each kind of system. So here we see, for example, the visits, the baskets, the purchase events. So it depends, of course, on which system you attach. You get different events. And in the later processes, you can access all these events. So you can see then in the next step, when we collected all the data, we want to build our audience. So there is a special audience builder where you can define your use case. So which audience do you want to have now and activate for the different channels? For example, for email marketing or for the personalization, you can define your target audience. And also for this is a nice interface. You can see here, for example, that you can select the different use cases from the different systems you have collected, and then you just model your perfect scenario, perfect user. Here we see, for example, that we want to have some frequent buyer which made 4 purchases within 30 days and also had a total amount of purchase orders. So you can access all the data from the different systems you collected and then make a cross reference through all the systems and build your perfect use case. And then you have the target group. You get some previews on the audience. You get, okay, so many users are in this target group. And then with this target audience, you can start activating them into different channels. So, and what you want to do with these users, there are multiple options. So there are connectors to different systems. You can find here also Ibexa is one of the DXP, but also social media accounts. You can use mail campaigns. You can transfer it to Salesforce, HubSpot, or a recommendation engine. So there are many different tools which are out of the box connected to the CDP, and you just need to activate them and define what you want to do with your target group. If you personalize it on your website, or if you make a marketing campaign, email campaign, so there are different kind of activations and to boost your revenues and your system. And for example, when we transfer these customers' target groups to DXP, then we see here the page builder, which is a marketing site builder with some drag and drop feature. So you can access the dynamic targeting group, and this targeting group is automatically transferred from the CDP into the DXP, and you can select the frequent buyer, for example, or the CRM inactive customers. So all the target groups you created in your audience builder. Then you can select them in the in this landing page tool, and every time a customer from this target group is going onto your marketing site or on the landing page of your shop, then you can select different strategies, what products and what offers, what discounts you want to target to especially this target audience. And this makes it completely flexible to have dynamic landing pages and marketing sites depending on the target group and optimize them for the better user experience on the sites. Okay, so.
Yes, thanks, Arthur. Thank you. A few more slides left, and I promise we'll let you go. So I'm sure we've all heard of that term, it's not just about the technology, it's about the people, it's about the processes. And it's very true. There's no point in integrating a state-of-the-art CDP into your tech stack if you don't have an A team that's there to support it and drive it forward. Now, typically, you have a lot more people involved in the project, in a CDP project. You'll have obviously your front-end and back-end developers. You'll have your PMs. You have your business analysts. But this is a task force that you would create in the latter stages of your project. Now that you've built the vehicle, you need people to start driving it. And so your CDP task force is is built around your use cases. So with every single use case, you need a series of decision makers. You need someone who is quite, let's say, intimate with the data architecture. I know I said that everyone should have a basic level of the data resolution map, but you still need an expert on site to advise you on the different kind of complexities might be involved in data capture and data transfer and things like that. So you need to have a data engineer on your task force if you can. Then the next one is someone who is an expert on the CDP. that they know all of the capabilities. They are well aware of. They can navigate their way through the user interface, and yeah, this person can be trained in-house, or it could be external. Hint, hint. Or yeah, and this person needs to understand exactly how to build those audience criteria, how to accurately qualify users and qualify them out of users as they fall through the different life stages. The next one is channel owners. So these are your programmatic campaign managers, your social media managers, your CRM managers, anyone who owns a channel, basically. Now, admittedly, there's obviously more than one person in that category, but you want to make sure that they are part of the decision-making process, because any CDP audience that you create and you want to activate, the channel owner is going to be the ones who decide, should I push it into the DSP? Should I push it into Facebook? What are the match rates? What is the campaign setup I should do? So they should be part of the process. The next player in the task force, I think, is probably the most underrated player in the CDP project. So we've just spent the last 45, 50 minutes talking about data, targeting, and profiling. We've not mentioned once about the content. And so if you don't have a good content strategy in place, there's no point in having a good data strategy in place either, right? And this is why I start the conversation with the guiding principles. What is the overarching message that we want to give to our customers? What is the overall customer experience that we want to generate to our audience? It has to resonate with them. It has to be relevant to them. And that's why the copywriter needs to be involved from the beginning, so that they understand what the guiding principles are. And then you have the data analyst. So yeah, with any sort of change that you make within the business, you want to understand how you're measuring success. So they can advise on what your A/B tests should look like, whether it's reaching statistical significance, and they will ultimately guide you in building that measurement framework to prove the incremental value of your CDP. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in, so I'm just going to take a step back and just give you a sort of 10,000 feet view of a typical project lifecycle. So as I said before, it starts off with the CX map. So typically that would be like a 2-hour workshop. We'll get with your teams, we'll do some whiteboards, post-it notes, draw things on the wall, and we'll take all of that information, we'll take it away, and we'll come back to you in like a week or 10 days, and we'll produce for you a CX map with all of the supporting documents. Then we'll do a data resolution map. Again, it will be like a 2-hour workshop. We'll take all that information away. We'll come back to you with and present to you a data resolution map. With those two maps, we will devise the tactical use cases, and if you need one, we will create a data governance plan as well. And so we try and make sure that month 1 is as productive as possible, to make sure we gather all the relevant information so that we have a battle plan ready for month 2 for your developers to take on board. And so by doing this, we think, and we've seen it, it builds a foundation that you can use as a launchpad to make sure that your CDP project is on a trajectory where by month 4, you are optimizing use cases, you're testing different use cases and optimizing them. And, I feel like it's a little bit cliche to say it, but I'm still going to say it. A CDP project, yes, it's a project. Yes, it has deadlines, but it's also a journey. And I say that because there's going to be a phase where you're integrating all these different data sources, you're implementing all these use cases, and you see that some of the use cases that you activated aren't as scalable. Or you find out that you have some technical limitations across your tech stack that you weren't aware of. Or you see that a lot of your data is unclean, and you have to do something about it. And obviously we're here to help you through that process to make sure that we de-risk your projects as best as possible. But there will be a sort of trial and error phase. And so there will be a point where you're putting a lot of effort in, and you're not really seeing any benefits. But it does get easier. With every single decision that you make, with every integration that you've completed, with every data that you've cleaned up, with every CDP audience that you've activated, you're placing building blocks that you can build upon for the long term. It's like building a house, It's like you will use that as your foundation, and that should help you improve the performance of your CDP. To the point where you will get to the point where also you've gathered enough historical data across your campaigns that the CDP's AI models, they become far more effective. They start to become better at predicting when a customer is going to churn. They become more efficient at understanding when a user is about to convert and when's the best time to target them. Until you get to the point where you've got like 50, 60, 70 predefined micro journeys or cross-channel campaigns that have all been designed, all been optimized in order to push users further and further down the funnel. And we believe that with the right people, with the right mindset, and ultimately with the right playbook, your road to success could look something like this. And I've seen it before where a lot of businesses, they struggle to get past that conversion point where your benefits start to outweigh your efforts. But as I said, with the right playbook and with the right sort of guidance, we've done it before, and we can help you get there as well. All right, I think that's the longest I've ever spoken on a stage, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to open the floor to some questions, if there are any. Anything? Oh. Thanks.